Good morning and welcome to this presentation for the July 2021 Hymn Society Conference entitled The Future of Hymnary.org. I'm Harry Plantinga, founder and director of Hymnary.org. I'm a professor of computer science at Calvin University. It's hard for me to believe, but Hymnary.org is something like 14 years old now. How time flies when you're having fun. Today I'll be describing what I think will be the next 10 years effort at Hymnary.org, an add-on site called My.Hymnary. The URL is my.hymnary.org. It's targeted directly at the needs of worship leaders, designed to make it easy to find songs, annotate them, get scores to musicians, and print and present scores in various forms. It's a place where you can get text and scores and recordings and other resources for the songs that you want to use in worship and easily license them. And it's more than that. It's a platform for publishing songs and collections of songs. Do you have a song you want to publish? Do you want to build a custom collection of songs for your congregation? Or maybe you work with a denominational hymnal committee and want to publish a denominational hymnal. You can do those things at My.Hymnary. Do you want to put together a collection of songs for a conference or an event? You can publish them at My.Hymnary. Or maybe you're part of a group of musicians like the Liturgy Fellowship Facebook group. You can use My.Hymnary to build a website, perhaps called the Liturgy Fellowship Songbook, with its own URL and its own graphic design, for finding and browsing songs and for sharing resources. So, how did we get to this point? People sometimes ask where Hymnary.org came from or how I got involved in creating this website. And it actually developed out of another project that I was previously working on. I previously worked on a website called the Christian Classics Ethereal Library, which was a digital library of classic Christian books. I got it started in about 1993, which makes it a very early website. In fact, maybe one of the first 1,000 or so in existence. Anyway, this website had a whole bunch of classic Christian books, some of which were hymnals. There may be 2 or 3 dozen hymnals or hymn collections. However, they weren't really very easy to use. They were treated as books. So you could look at a page, you could see what was on the page, but you couldn't search by meter or first line or composer, author. Back in about 2006, I was talking with my friend Greg Shear about this problem and about using hymns and searching for them, and about maybe a website where people could share resources like this. And we came up with this idea of what became Hymnary.org. And I got a small grant with the Calvin Institute for Christian Worship, and I used resources from Christian Classics Ethereal Library, and I started working on Hymnary.org. And I think in about 2007, it first came online. Here's what it looked like in 2010 in a picture from the Wayback Machine. We were targeting a number of different kinds of users. So there were worship planners, people planning worship services, hymnologists, just people generally interested in hymns, lots of different use cases, lots of different purposes for visiting the site. And so we went with a kind of a full treatment with lots of information. And as you know, a hymn information page has information about the author and composer and how the hymn is used, and hints for using in worship, and products that you can, arrangements you can get, and scores and page scans from different hymnals, and the list of all the hymnals it appears in. Very full information. But maybe kind of complicated. A lot of things that not everybody is interested in. We had tools. So we had a NEH grant, National Endowment for the Humanities, and we built tools for people researching hymns. And one of the things people researching hymns might be interested in is how do hymns change over time, or how do they differ between denominations or hymnals? And so here's a tool for comparing texts, two different versions of Amazing Grace. Here's a tool for seeing how often certain words appear in hymns over time. And this one compares the word man and woman. See whether men or women are more popular in hymns. And as you can see, let's see, the red is the percentage of hymns that mention man, and the purple here is the percentage of hymns that mention woman. And men originally, back in the 1800s, were way more popular than women, and it's getting closer now, but it's still a significant bias. We built tools like flex scores, which allow you to customize scores, text size, music size, transpose, selecting verses, and then print out a nice score. And as you probably know, this is what hymnary.org looks like today. So this was about, well, the website's 14 years old. We've been working on it for at least 14 years. We had a 10-year plan, a strategic plan. These are the things we want to implement. These are the things we want, the capabilities we want. We want to have, full treatments for hymns. We want flexible scores. We want information about hymns, suggestions for use in worship. We want to have page images of scanned hymnals. And basically, we implemented everything in that 10-year plan, or tried everything, discarded some that were bad ideas. And 3 or 4 years ago, it was time for a new strategic plan. And so thinking about what will hymnary.org be like 10 years from now? Where should it go? So to prepare for that, I did a lot of research. Did a survey of hymnary.org users. What are some current problems with hymnary? What are ways it could be improved? And getting feedback from users, one of the primary problems was that lots of times, most of the time, when you search for a song, you don't get the text or the score. And you probably know that copyright is the main issue here. But that just added some difficulty or complication or confusion for users. Complicated interface. As I said, lots of people that it's designed for. Some of the information is useful for some users and other information for others. So some people wanted less. I only want to see the stuff that's relevant to me. And lots of the capabilities, the same way. I don't need all of that stuff. Can you make it simpler, easier for me to understand? And users had lots of other requests and suggestions. They want, make it help with licensing. How do I license using songs? How do I keep track of all the scores that I use in my congregation for musicians? I'd like to create a custom congregational collection. Or maybe I'd like to create a collection for a meeting like this, or for a denomination. Can you help us sharing resources with each other? Can I publish my songs on hymnary.org? Lots of requests like that. So that fed into planning for hymnary.org's future. Then I did some research, and I looked at the number of hymnals indexed at hymnary.org by decade. So this shows that in the 1780s, what is this? Probably about 10 or 20 hymnals were added to hymnary, are in hymnary.org, that were published in the 1780s. And of course that number grows over time and peaks right at about 1900, 1910, at close to 600. And so the number of hymnals indexed at hymnary.org isn't exactly the number of hymnals published in North America by decade, but it's a decent proxy. I think we've got maybe a third to a quarter of all the hymnals published in North America are indexed at hymnary.org. And you can see the number of hymnals published grows over time, right up to about 1900s. And then it starts dropping. And it drops more or less continuously, except for a little blip after World War II and another blip after the Vietnam War. But the general trend is downward, and maybe in the 2010s, again, only about 60 hymnals indexed. So this is down close to, well, last time such a small number of hymnals was back in the 1700s. So why is it that fewer hymnals are being published? It's probably the case that lots and lots more copies of each individual hymnal are printed. Just less selection. Maybe it's getting harder to print hymnals, to publish hymnals. Maybe copyright control is difficult. Maybe there's consolidation in denominations and in interest groups. So I continued my research on what is becoming of congregational song. It's clearly been changing over the last few decades, and change is likely to continue. Where will it end up? Or where will it be in 10 or 20 years? I researched a number of questions like, where do people go to find songs? Is it just looking up a song in a hymnal, or is it finding them on the internet? Where do people go to get scores and recordings and other resources they need? How do they present the songs to the congregation? So all the questions I could think of about what congregational song will look like in 10 years. And then I thought about what trends are there in related areas that might be relevant. Are there trends in electronic publishing? So in publishing text, there's been great change in the last 20, 30, 40 years. Nowadays, you may write a book. If you write a book, you may prepare it in something like Microsoft Word. And if you need to publish it in different formats, you would transform into those formats automatically. So you would make your printed version, your EPUB version, or whatever, and it wouldn't require re-entering the whole book. What about in music publishing? It seems that you create a finale file for maybe a printed page. You might have to create a new finale file for a different form or for an instrumental version. There's less of this notion that you can enter it once and then present it in multiple different formats. Trends in hymnal publishing. Well, we pointed out that there are fewer hymnals, probably more copies of each one. It's getting more difficult to print hymnals, to create hymnals, partly because of copyright control. Are there relevant trends in computing? So probably the biggest factor, the biggest change in computing in the last 10 years is the rise of machine learning. In fact, some companies are rewriting all their software to take more advantage of machine learning. It's kind of a whole new style of computing. And is that relevant for hymnary.org? Does machine learning play a role? Should it? So we thought about that. And generally, we have some technological expertise at hymnary.org. What kinds of support should we provide for congregational song? What kinds of technological support would be useful? So some key principles, insights that we were working with. First of all, multiple modes of publication. So some congregations use the printed hymnal, some project, some print liturgies, some have seasonal publications, multiple ways that we get songs to the congregation, and that doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. So we decided we need to support multiple modes of publication, multiple sources of songs. Even congregations that have a hymnal in the pew sometimes use a supplement or look for other songs on the internet. It's no longer a matter of just choosing a song from your hymnal. It's usually there are multiple sources that you want to choose from. Multiple languages, bilingual services, services that are in one language, but maybe try to be more friendly to people who are speakers of other languages. This is becoming more relevant, and support in hymnals for bilingual services, bilingual worship is growing, but there's room for improvement there. And of course, one key differentiator is projection. According to our research, almost half of congregations project songs. Quite often they project lyrics only. Sometimes they project, they would like to project lyrics plus music notation, but it's too difficult. Sometimes they use recordings or videos. And performance recordings are becoming more important. So sometimes a congregation would like to have higher production values than what they can put together themselves, and so they use recordings of performances. Or maybe a small congregation with 25 members doesn't have a musician, and so they need to use a recording of a performance. As many of you know, licensing can be a challenge. Securing all the licenses you need, making sure you're reporting correctly, or getting licenses, even knowing what the law is, what kind of licenses are needed for what purposes. That's an area prime for simplification, if possible. And we wanted to work on better tools for music publishing, so you have a song and you can sort of automatically transpose it and show the vocal score version and show just the lyrics and maybe transform it into a trumpet score or something like that. Better tools for modifying scores for particular purposes. And then finally, this hymnary.org is complicated and confusing for some. We wanted to simplify. We wanted to simplify and focus on the largest user group, that is worship planners, people preparing worship services, pastoral musicians. So focusing on that user group, simplifying, removing some of the less needed functionality. And we ended up creating kind of a companion website for hymnary.org called My.Hymnary. And My.Hymnary is, one analogy is My.Hymnary is to hymnary.org like Song Select is to CCLI. It's got some key differentiators and principles. First of all, it's targeted directly at worship leaders and pastoral musicians. So those needs front and center. Secondly, it's simplified in some ways. We no longer have a notion of instances. So it used to be that Amazing Grace was considered a text authority on hymnary.org. Well, it is still that way. And we had lots of instances, which are the different versions of Amazing Grace that appeared in different hymnals. Now we just have Amazing Grace. It may have text and tune variants, but there's just that one song. All songs on My Hymnary are going to have media, so you can see the words, you can see the score. We want to make rights management easy. We want to make as much as possible free, so public domain things free. Songs that people are willing to share will be free. And we want to focus on 3 key tasks for worship planners. Planning a service, by that we just mean selecting songs, and then printing, creating nice scores, maybe instrumental scores or scores for the congregation or printed resources, and then presenting. And there we're thinking like PowerPoint or some kind of projecting on a screen. So supporting those 3 tasks first of all. And I would like to demo My.Hymnary for you now. And here we go. After 3 years or so of hard work, we're very pleased to be able to offer a public beta for My.Hymnary, and this is it. Basic functionality is all in place, and you can use the site, although we will continue to develop it as we get feedback from users, discover problems, figure out what additional functionality would be helpful, and the like. As you can see, it's focused on helping worship leaders, selecting songs, printing or presenting them for the congregation, providing scores and other resources for musicians, tracking and reporting songs you use, and the like. The plan capability enables worship leaders to collaborate with others to plan a service, selecting songs, receiving suggestions based on the scripture passage, topic, season, congregational preferences, selecting verses to sing, and the like. The print capability enables planners to customize songs, selecting stanzas or languages, selecting music and text size and style, transposing to a desired key, and printing high-quality scores of various kinds, lead sheets, chord charts, vocal scores, instrumental scores, large print, and more. Nearly 50% of congregations project songs, so we also built in rich, customizable support for projection. You can choose text only or add music notation. Select text and music size, and even optionally add a performance recording that will play back. You can project directly from My.Hymnary or export your presentation to your favorite presentation software. So let's imagine that we're preparing for a worship service on July 25. The scripture passage is Ephesians 3:14-21. You can, of course, search for songs by title, lyrics, tune name, scripture passage, season, author, composer, whatever you like. Let's search for Oh Love, How Deep. And there you can see my top hit comes in right at the top of the page is the one I was looking for. I can view the song. I can make sure it's the one I want. But maybe you don't know the song you want. Maybe you need suggestions. You know the service date. Let's enter that, July 25. Okay, here's a bunch of suggestions. These suggestions here, this song is often sung on the lectionary date you selected. So the default scripture passage is the common lectionary. And again, about half of congregations base services on the common lectionary. So here are songs that are recommended for this lectionary date by various sources or by the data we have on what songs congregations actually use on lectionary dates. But maybe this again is not quite as, not exactly what I'm looking for. Maybe I know the actual scripture passage, and I'm going to add that. Okay, here are search results for this particular scripture passage. So this song is associated with a scripture passage, either in a scripture index in the back of a hymnal, or based on text matches, or based on what worship planners actually use when that's the scripture passage. So here are some songs that I can try. Just As I Am Without One Plea, The Church's One Foundation. Maybe I will look further into this one. So I clicked on the song. Here it is, The Church's One Foundation. Wow, that's a lot of stanzas. maybe I will skip stanzas 3 and 4. And okay, here's the song. Text should be a little bit bigger maybe. Oh, that's kind of big. I want it all to fit on one page. Let's try that. There it is. That's the size it would have to be to all fit on one page. Maybe if I make it a little smaller. Maybe I can use one less stanza. Okay, so here's my song. And it's in E flat. What if I want to do it in C? Okay, I can transpose. There it is. So yes, let's use this one. So I'm going to add it to my plan. Here's my plan so far. It has one song. Except this is a July 25 service. And I want to add additional songs. I can go back to search. Yes, the scripture passage is Ephesians 3, 1-14. I don't really care to add ordinary time to the search. And song suggestions. So here are some additional songs that I could choose from. It would be relevant for the scripture passage. And maybe I'll choose this one. Now I've got 2 songs in my service. Okay, how do you use songs? Are you going to print them out? Are you going to project them? Maybe I will just choose 3 stanzas from this song, and maybe I would like it to appear on one page. And I could print it out at this point, get a nice high quality printout, but maybe I would like a printout with melody only. Here is a melody only score. Or maybe I want large print version. Maybe that will fit on 2 pages. Okay, and finally, if I don't want to print, maybe I want to make a presentation. Click the present button, and here I have a presentation. It's got 4-part notation, 4-part music notation. I can page through. And if I don't want 4-part notation, I could choose soprano only. And then I can just page through as my musicians are playing. Or maybe I'm in a small congregation and I don't even have musicians available to me. In that case, you can use a recording. So here's maybe 140 is a little fast. I'll go to 128 and save settings and play. That is a synthesizer. Maybe you want an actual human performance. There are some built in. There's small church music. These performances were recorded by an organist in Australia, sort of in the outback, and he served lots of small churches with like 25 members who were like 100 miles apart from each other. And instead of driving to each congregation, he made recordings that some of them could use, and he made them available on the web, and he made them, and now hymnary.org has this collection. But anyway, if you want to use this small church music recording, you can do that. And the hope is to have additional recordings later on. And maybe you have your own congregational band recording from a prior service, or maybe you found something on the web, on YouTube. You can enter a YouTube video URL and use that as well. So I've got my service all set up. At this point, I can download in PDF or PNG or PowerPoint format and use the slides that are generated this way in my presentation. So that was a brief demo of some of the capabilities of My.Hymnary. There are some that I haven't shown you, such as songs in multiple languages. There are some that are planned but not yet fully implemented, such as annotating scores with a pen on a tablet, or even audio annotations. But what may be the most consequential set of features that we're working on is making My.Hymnary into a publishing platform. There are two kinds of publishing that we have in mind. The first is individuals publishing their own songs. This is a dummy Create a Song page, but it gives an idea of what we're working on. To publish a song that you've written, you would upload a notation file, like a finale file, or if you don't have that, a text and a recording. Select some licensing options. For example, is it freely available to everyone, or do you require royalties for use? Sign a license agreement, and then click Publish. Suddenly your song is available to millions of users around the world. It appears in search results. You can opt to receive royalties every time it is used in worship. The second type of publishing we are working on is the ability for groups to publish custom collections. So, for example, a congregation could publish a congregational songbook, or a conference like this could create a conference songbook with a website where the songs could be accessed by people who have attended the conference, with royalties paid to copyright holders appropriately, and so on. Or even a denomination to create a denominational hymnal. We hope that this would make it much easier to create a denominational hymnal, and My.Hymnary would handle a lot of the difficulties like engraving, building a website, handling payment for use or subscriptions, making royalty payments to copyright holders. And you could even update the collection at will, as often as you like. It doesn't have to be static like a printed hymnal. So how would this work? Liturgy Fellowship is a Facebook group with like 5,000 worship leaders as members. And they support each other, they make suggestions of songs for particular purposes, and there are a number of composers and authors within the group that create music, and they share this music with each other, they share resources with each other. And they're looking for a website that they can use for sharing these resources, uploading and downloading and searching and finding and recommending. And this is exactly the kind of use we have in mind for My.Hymnary as a platform. So essentially, we'll be building a custom website which works a lot like My.Hymnary, but it has a restricted set of songs, those selected by the Liturgy Fellowship Editorial Committee. And it has a different graphic design, different URL, and it acts like a website for Liturgy Fellowship. Members of the Liturgy Fellowship group will be able to publish their songs that they write on this website. They'll be able to decide whether to allow others to use the songs in worship without cost or whether to ask for royalties. And then My.Hymnary, the platform, will do the rest, supporting a la carte purchases of licenses or an annual subscription. For worship leaders, it's easy. They can see all the resources for all songs, and if they use one in worship for which they don't have a license, they can click the license button to get one. No reporting is needed. The songs that are uploaded to the Liturgy Fellowship Songbook also become available on My.Hymnary, and if there's some other collection, custom collection, that wants to include one of these songs, they can without further licensing effort. They can simply drag it into their collection. Licensing is already taken care of. For authors and composers, after uploading a song and selecting some licensing options, and after the editorial committee of some custom collection chooses to add the song to the collection, if they have opted to start receiving royalties, then 70% of all the licensing fees or subscription fees go to the copyright holders according to the split they determine, and the remainder stays with My.Hymnary to try to keep My.Hymnary and hymnary.org running after grant funding ends. If you want to build a custom collection for a particular purpose, the idea will be that that's easy and kind of automatic. Click the Create a Collection button on the website. After entering some basic information like name, editorial committee, you can do some design, setting colors, font styles, what appears on the home page, and then you can start adding songs. Just drag them into your collection. If they're not already in My.Hymnary, then you can get the copyright holders to upload them and click the license agreement. The hope is that this will make it very easy to publish new collections. The custom collections part of My.Hymnary isn't complete yet. That's what we're working on now. We're working on the Liturgy Fellowship group first, and we hope that in a few months we'll have a Liturgy Fellowship Songbook website up and running. Hymnary.org is a partner of the Hymn Society. So if you are a member of the Hymn Society, you have a say in how it's run. We'd love to get your feedback. Try out My.Hymnary. Send your comments. Advise us on how it should work. Report bugs. What do you think about the platform plans? Would you be interested in editing a custom collection for some particular purpose? If you're a publisher, would you like to talk about getting a hymnal or songbook onto My.Hymnary? Let us know. If you have questions or feedback, or you'd like to hear more discussion, there will be a roundtable forum on Monday, July 12, 2021 at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. See you then.